Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar, Secrets of the Aisles, Critical Skills Every Booth Staffer Must Know and Master. I'm Kim Pilastro from Kim's Marketing Department, and I want to thank you for being an exhibitor and for taking the time to tune in today. This webinar is part of our commitment to exhibitor education and value. In addition to this webinar, we have an entire webpage dedicated to exhibitor success. You can see on this slide that includes an Ask an Expert questions box, a variety of different resources to help you measure ROI and to have the most successful exhibit as possible. This is all included in your booth package, and we encourage you to bookmark it and share it with your staff. So now I am going to turn over the presentation to Jefferson Davis, again, who you just heard from. He is the president of Competitive Edge. He has over 30 years of exhibiting experience and has helped his clients achieve tremendous successes. So take it away, Jefferson.
All right. Thank you, Kim. And I loved your Kim's Marketing Department. That's awesome. Thank you. And, again, thanks for everybody being here today. I've got a philosophy that what got me to where I am today might not sustain me another 5 years. It's so important that we all keep learning and growing, and the fact that all of you are here today tells me that you share that belief. So my hat's really off to you. There's a lot of exhibitors out there who don't know what we're going to be talking about here today, and I guess I'm excited because it's going to give you who are attending and viewing this a decided competitive advantage. My background's pretty simple. I live and breathe trade shows. Got tossed into my first show in 1985. I'm well over 30 years in this now, and I've always been on the hunt for what are the factors that really make the difference between making an expensive appearance or a productive, profitable investment. And as a trainer, as a consultant, working with hundreds and hundreds of companies in every industry you can imagine, I think we found some of the answers. And I say that because we've been able to trace combined now over $800 million in results from trade shows. So trade shows work. The stuff I'm going to talk about today works if you apply it. So that would really take me to my first poll of the day. Before we get into the content, I want to ask everybody on today's web briefing, take a look at your screen. The poll is live. Which of these 5 factors do you feel most impacts your company's exhibiting success? Look at the screen and press the radio dial button that applies. You can see your options are how big and pretty your booth is, where it's located on the show floor, your booth staff performance, quality of your products or your services, or how cool your giveaways are. Fastest fingers, press the radio dial button that applies to you, and I'll share the results in a moment. We're over 70%. Those of you who haven't polled yet, come on back with me and press one of those buttons, and I'm going to share the results in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Well, 71% of you said your booth staff. Nobody felt how big and pretty your booth was made the difference. And your show location came in at number 2. Well, I'm going to agree with the 71% of you who said your booth staff, and here's why. When you think about trade shows and what it's really all about, and you strip it down from the lights and the graphics and the hustle and the energy and the products, what are trade shows really about? Trade shows are about face and next. And only your people can manage the face-to-face component of your exhibit program. Okay, so that's a key takeaway. So those, again, those other factors can play a role, right? But they're not the make or break factors. A well-trained, motivated booth staff can make a fast and a huge difference in the ultimate traffic, the quality of your leads, and your ultimate return on investment. So what I want to share with you today is I do exhibit staff training, and the way I've developed my staff training program is to blend the very best practices in personal human interaction skills with solution-focused selling skills. And I've kind of blended those into a 4-step process that can be customized and applied by any type of company. Doesn't matter if you market a product or a service. It also doesn't matter if you're a small operation, 2 people, or you're a 10,000 person operation. These principles transcend size of company, and they transcend whether you market a product or a service. And so this training is the very same type of training that companies pay thousands of dollars to have us come in and deliver personally. As Kim mentioned, we're giving it to you for free as an exhibitor at Pittcon. So what are the barriers, right? What makes trade shows so difficult? Okay, well, here are some of the key barriers. The first one is your booth staff's perception of value. Me and my team, which by the way, will be at Pittcon this year doing our exhibit effectiveness evaluations, you'd be amazed at how many times we walk by booths and the booth staff is looking and acting like they would rather be anywhere but here, right? So if your booth staff sees trade shows as a show up, do their time, that's going to be a problem. And we have to somehow get our booth staff to wake up and smell the concrete, as I like to call it. So if they don't understand the value proposition, it's going to limit their effectiveness. Number 2 is bad habits. Some people have been doing it so wrong for so long that they've developed some habits that are very detrimental to being effective as an exhibitor. Number 3 is the recognition that the environment is radically different. How you interact, how you behave, what you say, what you do in a trade show in the hustle and bustle environment is completely different. And if your staff is not aware of the differences and they don't adjust their behaviors and their communication skills, they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle, okay? One of those environmental differences is the short interaction time. Write this down. The average interaction in a booth is 3 to 7 minutes. Now that raises a question. Can you get a lot done in 3 to 7 minutes? And the answer is yes, if you're aware of the environmental differences and you adapt. The next, physical and mental fatigue. You know, as a general rule on the opening morning of the show, all the exhibitors are pretty upbeat, right? They're standing up, they're greeting people as they pass the booth. Day 2 of the show, they start to cluster toward the back of the booth or the center of the booth. Day 3 of the show, they have what I call approach avoidance. They see a visitor walk up and they start shuffling the literature and make sure it's, you know, the literature's all neatly displayed. And it's that they're tired, right? And because shows are hard work, you know, let's not pull any punches here. Standing on your feet all day long, talking to more people in an hour than you see in a day, a week, or a month, right? Sleeping in a strange bed, eating strange meals, probably on a different time zone. It takes its toll. And not just the physical mental fatigue of the booth staffer, but the attendee too. Okay, so we have to understand these barriers and we have to counter them. Number 6, here's a big one. Information overload on part of the visitor. I want you to assume that every human being that walks into your booth is completely at the point of information overload. They can't hear, they can't process, they can't understand anything you show or tell them until you do a few specific things, which we'll talk about in the webinar. Number 7, high competitive presence. Everything you show, tell, say, and do will be carefully weighed to what your competitors are showing, telling, saying, and doing. Okay, now, how do we counter these barriers? Well, I think we have 3 options. Number 1, train it. This webinar represents a tremendous exhibit staff training opportunity for you. My recommendation is, if you're watching this solo, is that you log on to the recording, the replay of this, and play this at your pre-show meetings. Pull your team together the day before the show. And, if you've got internet and a computer, have them watch. Require them to log on and watch this webinar. Okay, this is the exhibit staff training, and it'll help them. Second option is you might be able to find it somewhere else in your company. I've had clients where we've gone into customer service, the warehouse, uh, administration, and picked people who had good personalities and trained them on exhibiting skills, and they make great booth staffers. Your third option is you can rent it. There are many companies out there today that provide well-trained staff that are very fluid and they're comfortable in the environment. They look great. They carry themselves well. If you give them FAQs, and tell them what to do, they can perform as good, sometimes better than your own staff. So you have those three options to jump these barriers. You can train it, which we're talking about. You can find it somewhere else, or you can rent it. Those are three ways to get over the booth staff barrier. So let's flip the switch here and let's look at this from the attendee perspective. I have personally facilitated over 75 panel discussions with trade show attendees where we actually have them sitting on a live panel talking about trade shows. One of the questions I ask at every panel is, what do you want? What do you need? What do you expect from booth staffers? Here's the top 7 things I've heard over and over and over again. Number 1 is that you look approachable. Number 2, that you're accessible and available. Number 3, being polite, being courteous, being considerate. Number 4, that you take the time to understand who they are, why they're at your booth, and what they want to learn. Number 5, you know your stuff. You know your company, you know your products, you know the market, you know the competition. Number 6 is that you show respect both for their time and their knowledge. And number 7, and notice this one's in bold, that if they give you their badge to scan and they ask you for information, you got to follow up. Okay, these are some of the basic things that attendees want, need, and expect from booth staffers. We need to make sure that our booth staff understands and is ready to respond. Responsiveness might be the single most important word that kind of ties all of these 7 points together. Responsiveness. Okay, so what makes a great booth staffer? Like if you could create a robot and put them in your booth, what would that robot, what would be the attributes it make? Well, number 1 is they got a positive attitude. The way I say it, they love to exhibit, and it shows. They look and act like they want to be there. Have you ever walked down the aisle at a show and looked in the booth and seen booth staffers who look like they don't want to be there? Well, we've evaluated 25,000 booths. We have seen it so many times it's scary. So half of the battle of staying toe-to-toe the entire show, talking to visitors, is just looking like you want to in a non-aggressive manner. Second, energy. Got to be able to stand on your feet. Got to be able to smile. Got to be able to greet people. How long? For every hour you're in the booth. Courteous. Number 4, engaging. They have to have the ability to walk up to a stranger and say, hi, my name's Jefferson, and you are, right? They got to be engaging. Number 5, write this phrase down. It's not what you tell, it's what you ask. The best booth staffers begin the first 2 to 3 minutes of the interaction by guiding the conversation, asking great open-ended questions to get the visitor to talk. Number 6, we don't ask these questions, just to ask them. We ask them to do what? Understand. So you got to be a good listener, and you listen not just with your ears, but with your eyes, right? Number 7, if you don't have anybody in your booth, visitors, and you need traffic, we're going to teach you a technique in a moment called SOS, but you can't fear rejection. Some people, not everybody's going to respond to you, so you can't let that freak you out and go, oh, this is terrible, and just stop. Number 8, knowledgeable. Number 9, they have to be able to communicate concisely, persuasively, and interactively. Write this catchphrase down. Less is more. And number 10, they understand that the outcome of a good in-booth interaction is the visitor committing to a clear next action. So they have a commitment mentality. They know when and how to ask for commitment in a way that gets the visitor to collaborate. So I would submit to you that those 10 attributes make a world-class booth staffer. I think the question for everybody on this web briefing today is, how does your staff measure up? Because here's the big idea. Individually or as a group, if your staff is deficient in 3 or more of these attributes, you've probably got a booth staff problem. And again, you're going to have to do what? Either train it, find it somewhere else, or rent it. Okay, so this, it'd be good to share these attributes and have your booth staff score themselves how well they think they do on these 10 attributes. If you put someone in the booth that matches up on all 10, world class. And by the way, write this down. Strategy. Best people forward in terms of who you put in your booth. Put your best people forward. There's a lot riding on your participation at a show. So let's flip the switch. We talked about what makes a great booth staffer. Let's kind of put the spotlight quickly on some of the biggest mistakes that booth staffers make. Well, number one is passive or over-aggressive. If they're sitting down behind a table with a Starbucks in one hand and a cell phone in the other, that's passive. If they're out in the aisle, pouncing on people, calling them by their name, having never met them, hey, John, how you doing there, right? Over-aggressive. Both of these behaviors repel attendees. Second, this one really, I see this so often and it blows my mind, sitting down in the booth, especially when talking to a standing visitor. Number 3, congregating with the other booth staff. What I call this is hanging with the gang, right? So let's say that your company wears branded shirts. Let's say you've got 5 booth staffers and they're all wearing red shirts. You got a gang. I tell you what, if I'm walking down the aisle and I glance into that booth and I see 5 red shirts standing there together, clustered, how easy do you think I'm going to find it to walk up to that booth? Not easy, right? So make sure your booth staff understands that when they're in the booth, half the battle is looking like they want to. Now, there's going to be moments where they have to talk to one another, but don't hang out. One of my team members, Trade Show Bob, he's on my team, he says it well. He says, don't confuse your brand space with your office space. Okay? Number 4, texting, talking, working on the computers. I walk by your booth, see this, I'm passing by. Number 5, failing to actually meet the person you're talking to. We're going to give you a technique to jump over that one in a moment. Number 6, just jumping right in and talking about your company and your products and your services before you have any idea as to who you're with and why they're there. Number 7, TMI, too much information. In a 3 to 8 minute, 7 minute interaction, you're going to have the time to make 1, maybe 2, possibly 3 points. You're going to have to be very selective about what points you make, right? Number 8, not linking features to benefits, right? Just saying, hey, let me tell you about this, and assuming that the visitor understands the value, the advantage, or the benefit. Number 9, not asking visitors what the next step should be. Closing the interaction by saying, well, Kim, if I can scan your badge, we'll send you some information. Well, here's the thing. Did Kim ask you to scan her badge? Did she ask for information? There's a lot of assuming going on there, right? And number 10, not capturing more information than just what's embedded in the badge. My philosophy is you may never have this chance again when this visitor has walked into your space, face-to-face, to ask good questions, to quickly build rapport, right? To learn more, right? You may never have this chance again. So these 10 mistakes will kill a booth's performance. So what's the takeaway here? Make sure your staff knows about these 10. Make sure that they are not violating or making these common mistakes. They will cost you. They will cost you booth traffic. They will cost you leads. They will cost you return on investment. They might even negatively impact your brand perception in the marketplace. Avoid the mistakes. All right, so let's flip the switch and let's get into skills here now. I've talked a lot about, right, about what makes a great staffer, what attendees want, right, the biggest mistakes we make. Let's put some real meat on the bones here, and let me give you very practical, battle-tested, proven techniques that are going to help you improve your booth staff performance at this Pittcon. Okay, number one, it's understanding that the first 30 seconds of the interaction are critical. Okay, the first decision, buying or relationship building decision, is your people. When a person enters your booth, they're going to unconsciously ask questions. Am I comfortable with this person? Will I open up and share with them? Will I listen to them? Do I believe them? Are they the kind of person or people that I would do business with? And they make very quick judgments. Here's what's scary. They make really quick judgments about your company or your products based on a very short interaction with your people. And at a trade show, and now we're talking from the booth, there are really only two engaging scenarios. I'm going to give you a step-by-step technique on both scenarios, but what I want you to understand is that untrained booth staffers are usually ineffective in both scenarios. Scenario number one, skill number one, if you will. So the visitor is in the aisle. They're near your booth. What do? Well, we teach a technique called SOS. Number one, stand up. Number two, open body posture. Number three, put a smile on your face. Number four, look towards somebody or look into the aisles. Okay, now if you only did that, you would probably double or triple your booth traffic. You would definitely double or triple the number of people that look at your booth, right? And then you watch for signs of interest, right? You acknowledge or you greet them. Hi, how you doing? Good morning, good afternoon. You watch how they respond to that. You know, they're moving down the aisle at a very fast pace. They pause, they slow down, they look at your booth. Ask an open-ended question. Now, here's the thing. When you're asking open-ended questions from the booth into the aisle, you don't want to get too up close and too personal quick. So questions like, how are you enjoying the show? What brought you to the show? Hey, what's been one of the coolest things you've seen so far? These are more like icebreaker questions. If you pounce on them and say, hey, John, if I could show you how to cut your product development time in half, would you be interested? Stay away from those as hook questions because they're too aggressive, right? You haven't even met the person yet. You don't know anything. How you doing? How you enjoying the show? What brought you to the show? What's been one of the coolest things that you've seen so far? So you can script a couple icebreaker open-ended questions, train your booth staff on the SOS technique, and guess what will happen? You'll have a booth full of interested visitors. Now, skill number two. What do you say and do when someone walks up and into your space? Well, we teach a welcoming process. Number one, greet them. Hi, how you doing? Good morning, good afternoon. Like you're glad to see them, right? There's over 600 booths at Pittcon. The average attendee will probably stop at anywhere from 20 to 40 booths in total. If they stop at your booth, act like you're glad to see them. You should be glad to see them. Out of 600 booths, they chose yours. Good morning. Hi, how you doing? It's not like this. Can I help you? Right? That's not going to work. Number two, welcome. Welcome them into your space, to your company by verbalizing, hey, welcome to Competitive Edge. Number three, here's a big one. Do not read their name off their badge. You are assuming a lot of things when you read their name off their badge. You're also missing the chance to start a relationship. And you go, well, hey, John, how you doing there, right? And John's like, do I know this guy? And he's like, no, I don't know him, right? You go, hey, my name's Jefferson, and you are. Write this phrase down. Key phrase, another one of those takeaways. Make the human bond before you go for the business bond. Understand that the visitor is out of their comfort zone. The most important word to every human being you will meet is their name. Do not take it off their badge and start calling them by their name unless you know them already, of course, right? And the way to get them to self-introduce is just the way I just mentioned to you. Hey, my name's Jefferson, and you are. That will force them to self-introduce, okay? And then ask a discovery question. If they walk up to your booth on their own volition and they haven't landed on a product display or anything, here's the question. What brings you by? What brings you to competitive edge today? If they're looking at something, you have a product display, they're looking at your display. You say, hey, I noticed you were looking at our, whatever your product is. Tell me a little about your interest. Greet them, welcome, meet, discover. Now, in these first two skills, here's my recommendation. You get your booth staff together before the show and you have them role play, practice these engaging from the aisles, welcoming visitors. If you will be getting more done in the first 30 seconds of the interaction than the average booth staffer gets done the entire show. Okay? All right. Now, it's one thing to get into interactions, right? But you also got to know how to get out of them. Write this phrase down. Time is the enemy. Time is the enemy, right? So you got to know, right, how to get out of, interactions that are going nowhere, right? So let me share some specific skills that you can use. Number one, just thank them and create space. Kim, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I appreciate you stopping by our booth, and take a step back. Number two, this is where your business card comes in handy. You should ask your booth staff to always have business cards on their person, and this is a great disengaging. Hey, Kim, I've really enjoyed talking with you today. I wanted to give you a business card in case you or anyone you know may have interest in our products, and I appreciate you stopping by the booth. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Number three, I like to find an exhibit near me that has maybe a cool giveaway or food and beverage or a really cool display, and I'll guide people to that booth as a way to do what? Get out of a dead-end conversation. Hey, Kim, have you seen that booth? Man, they have got the most incredible smoothies in there. If you haven't been there, you should drop by and check it out. They're going on and on and on. You've thanked them, you gave them a card, you directed them, they're not going away. Here's a technique I like to use to try to disrupt their thinking process. Ask them for a favor. They're going on and on and on. So you might say, hey, John, I wonder if you could do me a favor. Pause. I wonder if you could do me a favor. Whatever track they were running down, I promise you, you've derailed their thought process. All you got to do now is say, hey, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I've got a meeting that I need to get ready for. Hey, thanks so much for stopping by. Handshake, maybe give a card if you haven't already. And by the way, these techniques ascend in terms of their usage. You'll get out of 75% in steps 1 and 2. 3 out of 4 visitors you'll be able to get out of using steps 1 and 2. Okay, I've asked for a favor. They're still here. I can't get rid of this person. They will not go away. Now what? What I like to do is create a tag, a nonverbal gesture in the booth that when I flash the tag, my team knows that I thanked them, I gave them a card, I directed, I asked them, and they gently come over and they break up the conversation. Now, they go to the visitor first and say, excuse me, sir, I am so sorry for interrupting. Jefferson, you've got an appointment. I think John's going to be here in about 3 minutes. Okay, and that's your tag to get out. And if that doesn't work, and I'm only teasing here, hire bouncers. Okay, you will rarely have to go to number 5. Okay, so you got to know how to get out of interactions too. Okay, next. This is a skill, okay, and this is also perspective. you really want to set a very firm ground rule in your booth that we do not talk in detail about our company product services until we know three things: who we're with, why they're visiting, and what we need to do with this visitor. Okay, so the way we're going to get there is by developing a questions map or a plan. Front-end questions, the way I like to organize them, are situational, seek to understand questions. They're not hard qualifiers. So I might ask, hey, how'd you learn about our exhibit? What's prompting your visit? What brought you by? Tell me a little bit about your business. And what do you do with the company? What's your function? What are your responsibilities? What do you do with the company? What's prompting your interest in our specific products or services? And what sort of problems, concerns, projects, or problems? I would encourage you to get your team together and script out the best open-ended questions in these 6 front-end areas. You may not have to ask them all, but you should probably be asking 3 to 4 of them up front, because there's something else going on here as you guide the conversation with questions that I'll talk about in a moment. Now remember, your front-end questions are situational, seek to understand questions. This will tell you who you're with, why they're here, and give you a sense of what should I do with this person, right? And if it talks about presenting a solution, the one about projects, problems, concerns, or improvements will tell me exactly what pain point I need to speak to. Now, back-end questions are what I would call your harder qualifiers. And we call them back-end questions because you don't want to rush in like a bull in a china shop here and say, hey, well, tell me, are you the one that makes buying decisions for your company? You're going to shut them down. Even if they do, they're not going to tell you. So you lead with your front-end questions. Then you may go into presentation mode. Then you circle back on your back end. Now, not all of these back-end question areas may be important to you. Some definitely should and will be, but maybe not all of them. So on the back end, I might say, John, let me ask you, when you guys evaluate a product or service like this, what do you see your role in terms of the evaluation and deciding if it's a fit? Second question, who besides yourself might also need to know what we're talking about here or be involved in the communication process? Number 3 is, if you were to consider adding a new technology or solution or changing maybe an existing supplier or vendor, what would be the evaluation process that you would need to go through? Number 4 is the money issue. And depending on what you sell, you may or may not need to go there at this point. You could ask, where are you in the budgeting process? Have funds been allocated for this type of investment? Number 5, you definitely want to ask, what's our next step? And number 6, what is the time frame for our next step? So if you were to get your booth staff together and script out, pick the areas that fit and script out the best questions, not only would they have a questions map, but you could integrate these questions into your lead capture device, the most important ones, to ensure that you get higher quality leads with more information. Okay, so questioning. Speaking of questions, this might be a good time to take a look at your question queue and think about anything that I've talked about so far in terms of exhibit staff, and go ahead and type in a question right now. What I'm going to do is keep moving on because we've only got like 8 minutes left. Hard to believe already, but we're close. We're in the stretch run here. Okay, so here we go. Skill number 5. When you start talking about your company, product, or service, you are in the presentation mode. At a trade show, it's critically important to understand the real purpose. It's not to tell the whole story. They don't have the time, the mental bandwidth, or the attention span to take in. And all of you have so much knowledge, so much information, you could overwhelm anybody. Key phrase here, write this down. Just enough information to make that person go, this is awesome. I got to know more. wow, this is incredible. How do we get this? And therefore be willing to commit to a clear next action. So let me give you some presentation techniques which will help you hit straight to the visitor's information needs. Number one, never assume what a person knows or doesn't know about your company, product, or service. Ask. So before you go into presentation mode, say, John, you know, there's so much that I could tell you about our products here, but let me ask you, what do you know at this point? What a great question, right? Forces them to talk. And what are you listening for? You're not only listening for what they tell you, more importantly, you're listening for what they don't tell you. It's what they don't tell you that's going to be the missing piece of information that you're going to fill their knowledge gap, okay? So ask about familiarity technique number one. This is my favorite one here. This will tell me exactly what I need to focus on in this 3 to 7 minute interaction. You know, John, there's so many things that I could tell you about our training programs, but let me ask you, when you consider or evaluate, you know, this type of product, what are the 2 or 3 most important things you want to know? Not only will this tell you what you need to speak to, it'll also further qualify the visitor. Because if they can't answer this question, what's that telling you, right? Are you talking to the right person? Do they even have any involvement with your product services? Are you going to get long and deep with somebody who has no need, no interest, no money, no hurry? A lot of exhibit staffers do because they don't ask questions. So ask about evaluation criteria or what they want to learn. You'll be showing tremendous respect for their time and their knowledge. Number 3, 60-second messages. Remember earlier we said less is more? When I work with companies, we come in and do custom exhibit staff training. We build a visitor interaction process, a VIP. We script out the need-based questions, features and benefits, and we fold them into 60-second messages. The goal is to hit that information need in a concise, persuasive, interactive manner. And as you can see, there's 4 parts to the 60-second message. Tying back to the need, stating a fact or feature, linking it to an advantage, benefit, or payoff, and asking a feedback question. Let me show you what this looks like in the real world here, okay? So I market exhibit staff training, right? So one of the needs that I might be able to fill is helping a company improve their return on investment. So my question might be this, John, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with the return on investment that you're getting from trade shows? They might go, probably about a 3. What is the need? The need is to improve ROI. You know, one of the things I think might help, I'm going to transition to my presentation now, is exhibit staff training. Feature, a fact. One of the cool things about the way we do it is your participants create a personalized visitor interaction model. Now that's a feature, that's a fact, right? I can't assume that they get the value of that. So what that means to you is it will help your booth staff better manage the interaction to improve the quality of your leads. Now, many people would stop there or add another benefit. What you want to do is ask the feedback question. This is what closes the loop. This is what ensures that the message was delivered and understood. And this will also tell you, should you talk more, or should you end the interaction, or should you close on a lead? Kim, how important do you feel lead quality is to achieving exhibiting ROI? If I were working with each of you personally, I would sit down and take each of your solutions that you're going to present in the booth. I would script out the needs that they speak to. I would identify the key features and benefits, and I would script this into 60-second messages, and I would spoon feed my booth staff. I would have my entire team singing from the same hymnal, 60-second messages. Remember, time and information overload and fatigue are the enemies at a show. you're going to have time to make 1 to 3 points. This is how you world-class message in a booth at a show. All right, skill number 6. We've been talking about commitment all along, right? So a close in the booth is getting the visitor to commit to a clear next action. What happens next? When do you close? When you get positive feedback. That's why we use the 60-second message, right? That's why we ask the feedback question. Then once I ask that question, I think about, okay, what's next, right? Based on who this visitor is, my relationship with this visitor, and where we are in the sales cycle. So one of the most important things you can do is sit down and identify what are our typical next steps. What happens next when we talk to someone in a booth? Do we give them literature? Do we send them literature? Do we make a phone call? Do we do a site visit? Do we send them to another booth? Do we direct them to an educational session? Do we prepare a proposal? Do we have them talk to a advocate client? I don't know what your next steps are, but I think you've got to understand them clearly, and your booth staff needs to know them. Otherwise, guess what your booth staff will do? Well, if I can scan your badge, we'll send you some information. Well, again, did they ask for their badge to be scanned? And is the information the next step? Here's the 2-step process to get visitors to commit to the next step. Jim, based on what you've heard so far, does it sound like this might be worth learning more about, taking a closer look at? If you want to strengthen that, work for your project, work for your situation. That's the first step. The second step, if the visitor is fully engaged, call the next step. Why don't we go ahead and do this? If there is uncertainty or tentativeness on the part of the visitor, collaborate. Here's how we collaborate. What do you think our next step should be? How can we help you learn more about this? If the visitor collaborates on the next step, their commitment to it is more real. Okay, so we have covered a lot of ground, and yet I feel like we've scratched the surface. Key points. Your booth staff makes or breaks it. Attendees are going to make judgments based on your staff. Best people forward. Remember, it's about making a connection and getting a commitment to next. You know, you're not trying to eat the elephant in one bite here, right? This is a process. You're trying to meet somebody, build rapport, see if there's a problem you can help them solve, an opportunity you can help them seize. Give them a glimmer of hope that you can help them seize or solve it. Get them to commit to next. Train your staff. 86% of booth staffers have never had an hour of skills training in how to do this. This may be costing your company a quiet fortune. All right, I'm going to open up the question queue right now, and while I do that, Kim, was there anything from Pittcon that you would want to echo or add or on top of what I've shared here today?
No, I think you did a great job.
That's a lot of stuff. And by the way, what I just powered through could take anywhere from a half day to a full day internally if we really rolled up our sleeves and went through it. What I gave you as exhibitors was the high point. This is a combination of customer, interpersonal, and solution-focused selling skills, laser-focused for the unique, challenging environment called a trade show. So what I'm going to do is take a look at the question queue. Those of you who are logging off right now, thanks for logging in. Please watch your email the next 10 minutes and complete the survey. And everybody, please be sure to bookmark, share, and access the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. There's over $10,000 of free exhibiting productivity knowledge and resources there. It's free. It's part of your Pittcon package. All right, let me take a look in the queue. Okay, so someone's asking how long will this webcast be available? Kim, I believe you keep your ESRC up year-round. Is that correct?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so once you're a Pittcon exhibitor, you're a part of our tribe, our family. You have access to this. You can log on to the Pittcon website anywhere. Certainly, we encourage you to use it for Pittcon, but hey, when you're out there at other shows, just know Pittcon's your partner here, right? We've got you covered. Someone asked, can we make a copy of the PowerPoint? The PowerPoint is available in the replay online. The workbook we sent you mirrors the PowerPoint. Oh, great question here. I love this question from Jim. how do you keep your staff fresh during the show in terms of scheduling? I like to do split shifting when I have enough staff. So if the show's 9 to 5, I'll do a 9 to 1 shift and a 1 to 5 shift. I'll also put a firm 15 to 20 minute break right in the middle of each of those shifts. So split shifting and dedicated breaks. Now, if your staff has to go wire to wire, 9 to 5, the entire day, at least get a firm morning break, maybe in that first 90 minutes into it window for 10 minutes, some form of a lunch break to recharge, and some form of a small break in the afternoon. But yeah, the average person's productivity in a booth starts to fall off rapidly after 3 hours in the booth. Next question, are giveaways in the aisle a good idea? In my opinion, no. Number one, if you're out in the aisle, you're probably breaking the show rules in terms of, engaging and, pouncing on visitors in the aisle. And,
Yeah.
Right, Kim, is that true?
Yeah, so you can't go in the aisles. You have to stay within your booth.
Yeah. So, work from your booth. Now, I like a giveaway to hold it in my hand, but I'll be in my booth, and I'll use my SOS technique, and I'll hold a giveaway in my hand. Now, I usually use a very crafty giveaway. I use a tape measure with a calculator when I'm at a show, because my theme is success is measured by the companies you keep. So I'm standing in a booth. I'm 1.5 feet in the booth. I'm holding the tape measure. Someone walks by. I stand. I open, smile. I greet them. And then I pull the tape measure out and go, and I go, hey, when was the last time you measured the impact of customer retention? And it's a great hook, right? Now I can give them, and it has a calculator, so I can have them use. So make your giveaways unique, useful, quality, and support a message or a theme. A message or a theme. Okay, next question. Thank you. They're really starting to fire in now. Does your approach differ for a millennial or an older demographic? At the end of the day, people are people. There are certainly little things that, maybe older generations are really going to want you to be more respectful in terms of their knowledge. If they have like if it says PhD doctor on there, they're probably going to want you to call them by doctor. Millennials, maybe not. But almost all of the rules like the SOS, the 4-step welcoming process, transcend age, if you will. They're based on good interpersonal people skills. That quote that I gave you a moment ago, make the human bond before you go for the business bond. You'll never go wrong, meaning that what's most important to people? They want to be seen, they want to be respected, they want to be appreciated, they want to be heard, they want to be understood. And as long as you're coming from that place, and every technique that I build into my training really plays to every one of those wants or needs. So no, I wouldn't say there's going to be a radical difference in that. So that is all I'm seeing for questions. My assumption is we have given you a lot of great content. What's most important here is not what you heard today. It's going to be what you do. The best advice I can give you, we've recorded this, is get your team together 4 to 6 weeks before the show. Do the planning exercises in terms of the questions, the role-playing on the engaging, develop your 60-second messages, and then come back on that day before the show opens and do a mini refresher. So get the team together 4 to 6 weeks prior, do a mini refresher, and somebody be a booth captain. Somebody be in the booth and observing and high-fiving people when they're doing well and coaching people when they're struggling. So on behalf of everyone at Pittcon and my company here, Competitive Edge, it's been a joy and an honor to share ideas that matter with people who care. Okay, I appreciate you being here. Please be sure to complete the quick survey. Use all of the knowledge resources on the Pittcon Exhibitor Success and ROI Center, because if you will, I can close our webcast today, not by wishing you a successful Pittcon. I guarantee you'll have a more successful Pittcon. So thanks for logging in. Kim, any closing comments from Pittcon?
No, thank you all so much for tuning in.
All right, everybody. Thanks for your time. Have a great day. Keep learning, keep growing. We will see you at the upcoming show. Can't wait to meet you. Thanks, everybody.